The weight of empty rooms. Grace Holloway stood at the nurse's station, staring at the patient charts without really seeing them. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their harsh glow across the pediatric wing of Seattle Memorial Hospital. It was 11:47 p.m., and the world outside had settled into the quiet rhythm of sleep. Inside these walls, though, Grace remained wide awake, as she had been for countless nights over the past 3 years. 3 years since the accident. 3 years since her husband James had kissed her goodbye one ordinary Tuesday morning and never came home. 3 years of being both mother and father to Emma, of working double shifts to keep their small apartment, of smiling through the exhaustion while her heart carried a weight she never quite knew how to set down. At 34, Grace had become an expert at functioning on autopilot. Wake up, make Emma breakfast, drop her at school, work the day shift, pick up Emma, help with homework, tuck her in, then return to the hospital for the night shift 3 times a week. Her colleague Rebecca kept telling her she was burning out, that she needed to slow down, maybe even consider the job offer from that clinic in Portland. Better hours, better pay, a fresh start away from all the memories. Grace had been seriously considering it. Emma deserved a mother who wasn't perpetually exhausted. They both deserved a life that felt less like survival and more like actual living. The application sat half completed on her laptop at home, waiting for her to find the courage to press, submit, an unexpected arrival. The emergency department doors burst open just after midnight, shattering the relative calm of the graveyard shift. Grace looked up from her paperwork as 2 paramedics rushed through, wheeling a gurney with practiced urgency. She caught fragments of their rapid-fire report to Dr. Patterson, the attending physician, 41-year-old male, construction site accident, possible concussion, fractured ribs, multiple contusions. Grace moved instinctively, years of training pushing aside her fatigue. She joined the team as they transferred the patient to the examination room. The man on the gurney was conscious but clearly in pain, his face scraped and bruised, his breathing shallow. What struck her most, though, were his eyes. Even through obvious discomfort, they held a certain clarity, a presence that suggested he was taking everything in despite his condition. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" Dr. Patterson asked, shining a penlight to check his pupils. "Daniel," the man managed, his voice rough. "Daniel Rivers. Do you know what day it is, Daniel?" "Thursday, October 10th. And before you ask, I know I'm in a hospital. And I know I fell off a scaffold like an idiot, despite the pain." There was a hint of wry humor in his tone. Grace found herself suppressing a small smile as she checked his vital signs. Most patients in his condition were either panicking or too disoriented to crack jokes. This Daniel Rivers was different. The first real conversation, 2 hours later, after x-rays confirmed no internal bleeding, and Daniel had been admitted for overnight observation. Grace found herself assigned to his room for regular monitoring. He was awake, propped up slightly in bed, staring at the ceiling with the restless energy of someone unaccustomed to being still. "Can't sleep?" Grace asked quietly, entering to check his IV line. "Not really my strong suit, even on good days," Daniel admitted, turning his head carefully toward her. "Plus, these beds weren't exactly designed for comfort. No, they really weren't." Grace adjusted his pillow slightly. "But you need to rest. Your body's been through trauma, so I've been told." He studied her face for a moment. "You look tired. Long shift?" The observation caught her off guard. Patients rarely notice the nurses beyond their immediate needs. "It's been a full night," she said diplomatically. It's a polite way of saying yes. Daniel's expression softened. "I'm sorry. Here I am, taking up your time with my poor life choices and questionable scaffolding skills." Grace felt that unexpected smile tugging at her lips again. "It's literally my job. No apologies needed." Still, shifted slightly, wincing. "Thank you for everything tonight. I know it's not easy work." Something in his sincerity made Grace pause. She'd received countless thanks over the years, the automatic gratitude people offered to medical professionals. But this felt different. This felt like he actually saw her, not just the nurse uniform and the professional competence. "You're welcome," she said softly, then added before she could stop herself, "Your family must be worried. Have you called anyone?" Daniel's expression shifted, a shadow passing across his features. My son Tyler. He's 9. He's staying with his grandmother tonight. I called them from the ER. Let them know I'm okay. Well, mostly okay. You're a single parent? The words slipped out before Grace could consider whether they were too personal. Yeah, 3 years now. His mother left when he was 6. Decided motherhood wasn't for her after all. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a quiet acceptance of a difficult truth. It's just been Tyler and me figuring things out together. Grace felt something shift in her chest. I understand that. My daughter Emma is 7. It's been just us for 3 years too. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the unspoken, acknowledgement that they both knew what it meant to carry the weight of single parenthood. To be strong when you wanted to break, to keep going when every part of you was tired. The walls began to crack over the next hour. Between Grace's regular check-ins, they talked. Really talked. Daniel told her about his architecture firm. It's how he specialized in designing accessible community centers. How he'd been on site that day because he liked to see his projects through from blueprint to reality. He talked about Tyler's obsession with space exploration and how they spent Saturday mornings at the Science Museum. Grace found herself sharing more than she typically did with patients. She told him about Emma's love for art, how their apartment walls were covered with her colorful drawings. She mentioned the exhaustion of juggling work and parenthood, though she kept the details vague. Protective of the deeper grief she carried. You're thinking about leaving? Daniel said suddenly. His perception startling her. What makes you say that? The way you talked about your job, past tense. Like you're already halfway gone. Studied her face. And the sadness in your eyes. I recognize it because I see it in the mirror sometimes. Grace felt her throat tighten. Nobody had called her out like this in years. Everyone in her life had learned to accept her careful deflections, her insistence that she was fine. But here was a stranger seeing through it all in a single night. There's an opportunity in Portland, she admitted quietly. Better situation for Emma and me. A chance to start fresh. Running towards something or running away? The question was gentle, not judgmental. Grace didn't answer immediately. She checked his vitals, adjusted his blanket, performed the familiar tasks that gave her hands something to do while her mind wrestled with the truth. Maybe both, she finally said. A moment of truth as Grace prepared to leave his room. Daniel spoke again. I know we just met, and I know you have every reason to tell me to mind my own business. But can I say something? She paused at the door. Go ahead. Whatever you're running from, it follows you. I learned that the hard way after Tyler's mom left. I tried to outrun the pain, the anger, the fear that I couldn't do this alone. Moved to a new neighborhood, changed jobs, kept busy every waking moment. But the hurt was still there every morning. He met her eyes. It wasn't until I stopped running and started healing that things got better. Grace felt tears prick her eyes, the first genuine tears she'd allowed herself in months. What if I don't know how to heal? What if you don't have to know? What if you just have to be willing to try? Daniel's voice was soft but firm. Your daughter needs her art-loving, hard-working mother. But she also needs that mother to be happy, not just surviving. The words hit Grace like a gentle earthquake, shaking foundations she'd thought were solid. She nodded, not trusting her voice, slipped out of the room before the tears could fall. Standing in the empty hallway, Grace pressed her back against the wall and took a shaking breath. For 3 years she'd been running. Running from grief, from memories, from the possibility of ever being hurt again. She'd convinced herself that moving to Portland was about opportunity, about giving Emma a better life. But Daniel had seen the truth in a single conversation. She was running away from the chance of ever feeling whole again. The decision to stay the rest of Grace's shift passed in a blur of activity. She tended to other patients, filed reports, restocked supplies, but her mind kept returning to room 412, to the man who'd seen through her carefully constructed walls with such gentle precision as dawn broke over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Grace stood at the window of the break room, coffee growing cold in her hands. Rebecca found her there, concern etched on her face. You okay? You've been quiet all night. Not taking the Portland job, Grace said suddenly. the words surprising her even as she spoke them. Rebecca's eyebrows rose. What changed? Grace thought about Daniel's question. Running toward or running away? I think I've been trying to escape instead of heal, and maybe it's time I stopped. That's big, Grace. What brought this on? A patient. He said something that made sense. She turned to her friend. I've been so focused on protecting Emma and myself from more pain that I forgot we also deserve joy. Real joy. Not just the absence of sadness. Rebecca pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you. This city needs good nurses. Emma needs her mom. And maybe, just maybe, you need to give yourself permission to live again. As Grace finished her shift and walked to her car in the early morning light, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope, not the desperate, grasping hope of someone drowning, but the quiet, steady hope of someone ready to swim toward shore. She didn't know what would happen with Daniel Rivers. He was a patient, and there were boundaries, professional lines that shouldn't be crossed. But their conversation had cracked something open inside her. Let light into spaces that had been dark for too long. Grace climbed into her car and sat. For a moment before starting the engine, she pulled out her phone and opened the email with the Portland job application. Her finger hovered over the delete button, then she pressed it. Whatever happened next, Grace Holloway was done running. She was ready to stand still, to heal, to see what life might offer if she gave it the chance. And somehow, she knew that conversation with an injured architect in the middle of the night had changed everything. As she drove home through the waking city, Grace allowed herself a small smile. Emma would be getting up soon, ready for school, full of questions about her mother's night, and for the first time in a long time, Grace felt ready to face the day ahead, not with exhaustion, but with possibility. The night shift had ended. But perhaps something new was just beginning. The unexpected visitor Grace had exactly 3 hours of sleep before Emma's cheerful voice pulled her back to consciousness. Her daughter stood beside the bed, already dressed in mismatched socks and her favorite purple dress, holding a drawing she'd apparently been working on since dawn. Mama, look. It's you as a superhero nurse. Grace pulled herself upright, accepting the picture with genuine admiration. Emma had drawn her in scrubs with a cape, surrounded by smiling stick-figure patients. In the corner, a small girl who was clearly Emma held her mother's hand. You're so talented. Grace kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Mrs. Rodriguez says I should enter it in the art show at school. Can I absolutely? Grace swung her legs out of bed, pushing aside her fatigue. Now let's get you some breakfast before the bus comes. As they moved through their morning routine, Grace felt different somehow. Lighter. The decision not to take the Portland job had lifted a weight she hadn't fully acknowledged carrying. She wasn't running anymore. That realization brought both relief and a flutter of nervous anticipation. What came next when you stopped running? The return visit 4 days later, Grace was back on shift when Rebecca appeared at the nurse's station with a knowing smile. Your architect is being discharged today. Thought you'd want to know. Grace felt her heart skip. He's not my architect, right? Just the guy who made you rethink your entire life in one conversation. Rebecca grinned. Room 412, if you want to say goodbye. Grace tried to focus on her paperwork, telling herself it would be inappropriate to seek him out. Daniel was a patient. Their conversation, meaningful as it had been, was just one of those hospital moments. That felt significant in the bubble of crisis, but wouldn't translate to the real world. Yet she found herself walking toward room 412 during her break. Daniel was sitting on the edge of the bed. Dressed in clean clothes, someone must have brought him. The bruises on his face had faded from angry purple to yellowish green, and he moved more easily than he had 4 nights ago. He looked up as she knocked softly on the doorframe. Grace. His face lit up with genuine pleasure. I was hoping I'd see you before I left. Just wanted to make sure you're following discharge instructions. It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it, religiously. Doctor's orders and all that. He stood carefully. Actually, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to thank you again, and to apologize if I overstepped the other night. Sometimes pain medication makes me too honest. You didn't overstep, Grace said quietly. You were right. About everything. Their eyes met, that same understanding passing between them. I'm not taking the Portland job, she continued. I'm staying in Seattle. Staying put for once. Daniel's expression softened. That's good. Really good. Seattle's lucky to keep you. Comfortable silence stretched between them. Grace knew she should leave. Get back to work, maintain professional boundaries. Instead, she heard herself saying, Your son must be excited to have you coming home. Tyler's been counting the minutes. He's planned an entire welcome home party. I'm told there will be pizza and a banner. Daniel smiled, then hesitated before adding, He's the best thing in my life. Being a single parent is hard, but moments like this remind me why it matters. I know exactly what you mean, Grace said. Emma's my reason for everything. Maybe. Daniel paused, seeming to gather courage. Maybe sometime Tyler and Emma could meet. I know it's forward, and I completely understand if you'd rather not. But I got the sense that you and I understand each other. And kids who are growing up with single parents sometimes need friends who get it. Grace felt her protective instincts war with something newer, something that felt like possibility. That's actually a lovely idea. Emma could use a friend who understands her situation. They exchanged phone numbers, keeping the conversation casual, friendly. Nothing that crossed professional lines. Just two single parents making a playdate arrangement for their kids. But as Daniel left the hospital, pausing at the door to give her one last warm smile, Grace felt her carefully constructed walls continue to crumble. The first plated 2 weeks later, Grace found herself at Discovery Park with Emma, waiting near the playground. She'd changed outfits 3 times that morning, finally settling on jeans and a comfortable sweater. Trying not to overthink what was essentially just a children's playdate. Emma bounced excitedly beside her. Is this the boy whose dad you helped at the hospital? Yes, his name is Tyler. Be nice and share the swings, okay? I'm always nice, Mama. Emma's indignant tone made Grace smile. Then she saw them. Daniel walked across the grass, moving without the careful stiffness of his hospital days. Beside him, a boy with dark hair and his father's thoughtful eyes carried a soccer ball under one arm. Grace, this is Tyler. Tyler, this is Miss Grace, and her daughter Emma. Hi. Tyler offered a shy wave. Dad says you're the nurse who took care of him. Thank you for fixing my dad. Grace felt her heart melt a little. You're very welcome, Tyler. Emma's been excited to meet you. The children regarded each other with the cautious curiosity of potential friends. Then Emma spotted the soccer ball. Do you like soccer? I'm not very good, but I like trying. Tyler's face brightened. Me too. Want to play? Just like that, they were off, running toward an open field, leaving Grace and Daniel standing together in the autumn sunshine. That was easier than expected, Daniel said with a laugh. Emma makes friends quickly. She's braver than I am in that department. The admission slipped out before Grace could stop it. They walked slowly, keeping the children in sight while maintaining enough distance to give them space. The conversation flowed easily, no longer constrained by hospital protocols or patient care concerns. Daniel told her about his latest project, a community center designed specifically for accessibility. Grace shared stories about the pediatric wing, the small victories and heartbreaks that came with caring for sick children. You love your work, Daniel observed. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about your patients. I do. Even on the hard days, Grace watched Emma attempt to kick the ball, missing wildly but laughing anyway. Being a nurse was something I chose for myself, not something I fell into. After James died, my job was one of the few things that made me feel like I still had purpose. James was your husband? Grace nodded, surprised by how naturally his name came out. She rarely spoke about him anymore, had trained herself to keep that pain locked away. We were married for 6 years. He was a firefighter. There was a warehouse fire, and he went in to make sure everyone was out. The building collapsed. Daniel didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward sympathy. He simply said, I'm so sorry, Grace. That must have been devastating. It was. It still is, some days. She took a breath. But I'm learning that grief doesn't mean I have to stop living. It took me a long time to understand that. Tyler's mother didn't die, but in some ways, I had to grieve the loss of who I thought she was. Daniel kicked at a loose stone. She was never really ready for motherhood. I think she tried, but one day she just couldn't pretend anymore. She left a note saying she needed to find herself, whatever that meant. Tyler was devastated. How did you help him through it? Therapy, lots of patience, and probably too much ice cream in the beginning. Daniel smiled sadly. I told him the truth as gently as I could. That his mom loved him but couldn't be the parent he deserved right then. That her leaving wasn't his fault. That we were going to be okay, just the two of us. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. You're a good father, Daniel. I'm a trying father. That's all any of us can do, right? Try our best and hope it's enough. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children play. Tyler was teaching Emma how to dribble the soccer ball, patient when she stumbled, cheering when she succeeded, the moment everything shifted an hour later. The children flopped dramatically onto the grass, declaring themselves tired and hungry. Daniel had brought sandwiches and juice boxes, spreading them out on a picnic blanket he'd packed. Grace contributed apple slices and cookies. And they settled into an impromptu meal. Emma leaned against Grace's shoulder, happy exhaustion written across her face. Mama, can Tyler be my friend? Like my real friend. Of course, sweetie. If Tyler wants to be friends too. Tyler looked at his father, then back at Emma. Yeah, you're fun. And you don't laugh when I miss the goal. Why would I laugh? Missing is part of learning, Emma said it, with such serious wisdom that both adults had to suppress smiles. As the afternoon stretched on, Grace realized she hadn't checked her phone once. Hadn't worried about schedules or obligations. Hadn't felt the familiar anxiety that usually accompanied social situations. She was simply present, enjoying the sunshine and laughter and easy conversation. When it was time to leave, Tyler hugged his father, then surprised everyone by hugging Emma too. Can we do this again, please? I'd like that, Emma said, looking up at Grace hopefully. We'll definitely do this again, Grace confirmed. Meeting Daniel's eyes over the children's heads, as they walked to their cars, Daniel touched her arm gently. Thank you for today. It meant a lot. To both of us, it meant a lot to us too. Grace hesitated, then added, Daniel, I'm glad you fell off that scaffold. He laughed, a real, full laugh that made her stomach flutter. That might be the strangest compliment I've ever received, but I know what you mean. I'm glad too. The crisis that brings them closer, 3 weeks into their growing friendship. Grace's phone rang at 2 a.m. She jolted awake, heart pounding with the familiar fear that late-night calls brought. Daniel's voice came through, tight with worry. Grace, I'm sorry to call so late. We're at the emergency room. Tyler fell off his bed and hit his head. He's okay, but they want to keep him for observation, and he's scared and asking for you. I know it's too much to ask, but I'm on my way. Grace was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. Which hospital? Seattle Memorial. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She called her neighbor, an elderly woman who'd become like a grandmother to Emma. Explaining the emergency, Mrs. Chen arrived quickly, shooing Grace out the door with assurances that Emma would be fine. Grace drove through the empty streets, her nursing instincts already analyzing what Daniel had told her. A fall from bed, head injury, observation protocol. Tyler was probably fine, but head injuries in children required caution. She knew Daniel must be terrified. She found them in a curtained bay in the pediatric emergency department. Tyler lay on a gurney, a small bandage on his forehead, looking small and frightened. Daniel sat beside him, holding his hand, his face pale with worry. Grace. Tyler's face brightened when he saw her. Dad said you might come. Of course I came. She moved to his other side, her professional training kicking in as she assessed him with experienced eyes. I heard you took a tumble. Want to tell me what happened? I was dreaming about flying, and I guess I tried to do it for real. Tyler's voice was small. I'm sorry I scared Dad. You don't need to apologize, buddy. Accidents happen. Grace smoothed his hair back gently. The doctors are taking good care of you, and your dad is right here. You're safe. Over Tyler's head, Grace met Daniel's eyes. She saw the naked fear there, the same terror every parent feels when their child is hurt. On instinct, she reached across and squeezed his hand. He's going to be fine, she said quietly but firmly. I promise. Daniel's fingers tightened around hers, holding on like she was an anchor in a storm. "Thank you for coming." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." The words held more meaning than she intended. But she didn't take them back. Grace stayed through the night, using her connections in the hospital to check on Tyler's status, translate medical jargon for Daniel, and most importantly, keep Tyler calm and entertained with stories. By morning, when the doctors cleared Tyler for discharge with instructions for monitoring at home, the three of them felt like a unit. The confession a week later, after Tyler had fully recovered, Daniel asked Grace to meet him for coffee while the kids were at school. They sat in a quiet corner of a neighborhood cafe, steam rising from their cups. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said, his hands wrapped around his mug. "And I'm nervous about it because I don't want to ruin what we have." Grace's heart began to race. "Okay. That night in the hospital, when we first talked, you changed something for me. I'd been going through the motions for 3 years, being a dad and working and telling myself that was enough. And it was enough. Tyler is everything to me." He paused, gathering his words. "But then I met you, and I remembered that I'm also just Daniel. A person who wants connection and understanding and maybe even happiness again." "Daniel," Grace started, but he gently interrupted. "Let me finish, please." We took a breath. "Over these past weeks, getting to know you and watching Emma and Tyler become friends, I've realized something. I'm falling for you, Grace. Maybe I've been falling since that first night. And I know it's complicated. We're both single parents. We've both been hurt. We've both built walls to protect ourselves and our kids. But I think maybe those walls don't have to stay up forever." Grace felt tears slide down her cheeks. Happy tears this time, not sad ones. "I'm scared, Daniel. So am I terrified, actually. What if this doesn't work? What if we hurt each other? What if the kids get attached and then—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Daniel reached across the table and took both her hands. "What if it does work? What if we're brave enough to try? What if our kids grow up watching us choose happiness instead of just safety?" Grace thought about that conversation in the hospital, about running toward something instead of running away. She thought about Emma's drawings that had started including Tyler and Daniel and their stick figure family. She thought about how she laughed more now, felt lighter, looked forward to each day instead of just enduring them. "I'm falling for you too," she whispered. "I have been for a while. It terrifies me." "Good. We can be terrified together." Daniel smiled, that warm smile that had first cracked open her carefully guarded heart. "We'll go slow. We'll be careful. We'll put the kids first." "But Grace, I think we deserve a chance at this." She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. Then she stood, walked around the table, and let him pull her into a hug. They stood there in the middle of the coffee shop, holding each other, two broken people, finding wholeness in the most unexpected way. "So what now?" Grace asked against his shoulder. "Now we take it one day at a time. Together." As they walked out of the cafe hand in hand, Grace felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt ready. Ready to heal, ready to love, ready to build something new without forgetting what came before. The past would always be part of her. James would always be Emma's father, always hold a place in Grace's heart. But the past didn't have to define her future. Daniel had taught her that. And now, together, they could teach their children the same lesson, that love, real love, was worth the risk. The family we choose 3 months into their relationship. Grace and Daniel had settled into a rhythm that felt both natural and miraculous. They alternated weekends between their apartments, the kids sharing sleeping bags and staying up late telling stories. Grace's walls had gradually filled with drawings that included all 4 of them. Daniel's refrigerator displayed Emma's artwork alongside Tyler's school projects. It was a Saturday morning in January when everything came together in an unexpected way. They'd planned a trip to the Seattle Aquarium, all 4 of them bundled against the cold rain that misted across the city. Emma held Grace's hand while Tyler walked beside Daniel. But the children kept switching positions, running ahead together, falling back to walk between their parents, completely comfortable in the fluid dynamics of their blended family. "Hey, look, Mama." "Tyler, look. Octopus." Emma pressed her face against the glass, breath fogging the surface. Tyler joined her. Both children transfixed by the creature moving with alien grace through the water. Grace felt Daniel's arm slip around her waist, pulling her close against the chill. "This feels right," he murmured into her hair. "All of this, it does." Grace leaned into him, watching their children. "It scares me how right it feels. Still scared?" he asked gently. Less than before. Now, it's more like nervous anticipation instead of terror. She turned to look up at him. "You've been patient with me, with all my hesitations and walls. You've been worth the patience." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Besides, I had my own walls to work through. We've been doing this together." A shriek of laughter drew their attention back to the children. Tyler had pretended the octopus was trying to grab him, making exaggerated, scared faces that sent Emma into giggles. "They're good together," Grace observed. "Really good, they are. Tyler told me last week that Emma was his best friend." Daniel's voice carried a note of emotion. He hasn't had a best friend since his mom left. He's been too guarded, too worried about people leaving. Emma said something similar to me. She told me that Tyler understands about missing someone. About having a hole in your family that doesn't go away? Grace blinked back tears. She asked me if that hole could change shape to fit new people. Daniel pulled her closer. "That's pretty wise for a 7-year-old. She gets it from her father. James was wise like that too." Grace said his name is Ailey now, without the sharp pain that had accompanied it for so long. "I think he'd like you, Daniel. I think he'd be glad Emma and I found you both. I hope so. I'd like to think so." Daniel cleared his throat, visibly moved. "Grace, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." Before he could continue, Tyler and Emma rushed over, faces flushed with excitement. "Can we get lunch at the cafe?" "They have fish and chips." Tyler bounced on his toes. "And hot chocolate," Emma added. "Please, Mama?" "Please, Daniel." Grace and Daniel exchanged amused glances. The children had started calling them both by their first names, creating their own version of what family meant. Grace had been Mama and Miss Grace. Now she was simply Mama to Emma and Grace to Tyler. Daniel was Dad to Tyler and Daniel to Emma. Separate but connected. "Fish and chips it is," Daniel agreed. "But you two have to share one order, because I've seen how much you actually eat versus how much you claim you'll eat." They squeezed into a corner booth, kids on one side, adults on the other. Emma and Tyler immediately launched into an animated discussion about which sea creature was the coolest, their voices overlapping in enthusiastic disagreement. Grace watched them, her heart so full it almost hurt. This was what healing looked like. Not forgetting the past, but making room for a future that honored both what was lost and what was found. The moment of truth that evening. After they'd dropped Emma and Grace at their apartment with promises to see each other tomorrow, Daniel sat Tyler down for a serious conversation. "Buddy, I need to talk to you about something important." Tyler looked up from his book, curiosity and slight worry crossing his face. "Am I in trouble?" "No, not at all. I just want to know how you're feeling about Grace and Emma, about all the time we spend together." Tyler thought for a moment, his face serious in that way that reminded Daniel so much of himself. "I like it. Emma's fun and Grace is nice. She makes good cookies and she doesn't treat me like I'm a baby. Do you think you'd like to spend even more time with them?" "Like how much more?" Daniel took a breath. "Like maybe living together kind of more eventually. Not right away, but someday." Tyler's eyes went wide. "You mean like a real family? All of us together. Would that be okay with you?" Instead of answering immediately, Tyler asked his own question. "Do you love Grace?" The directness shouldn't have surprised Daniel, but it still made him pause. "I do, Tyler. Very much. And she loves you." "I believe so, yes." Tyler nodded slowly, processing. "My mom left because she didn't really love us enough to stay." "Right." Daniel's heart clenched. "Your mom has her own struggles, buddy. It wasn't about not loving you. Sometimes adults have problems that have nothing to do with their kids. But Grace wouldn't leave like that. I can tell." Tyler's confidence was absolute. She stays even when things are hard. Like when I was in the hospital and she came in the middle of the night, and she listens when Emma talks about her dad who died, even though it makes her sad. You're very observant, Tyler. I learned from you. Tyler grinned, then grew serious again. I like the idea of us all being together. Emma says, I'm the brother she always wanted, and Grace gives good hugs. Different from your hugs, but still good. Daniel pulled his son into his arms, overwhelmed with gratitude for this wise, brave little person. Thank you for being honest with me, and thank you for being open to this. Are you going to marry her? Tyler asked, voice muffled against Daniel's shoulder. Maybe someday. If she says yes, if you and Emma are comfortable with it, I think I'd be comfortable with it. Tyler pulled back, looking his father in the eye. I think I'd be really happy with it, actually. Grace's parallel conversation at the same time in their own apartment. Grace and Emma were having a remarkably similar discussion. Emma had been unusually quiet during their bedtime routine. Grace had learned that quiet Emma usually meant thinking Emma. What's on your mind, sweetheart? Grace asked, tucking the blankets around her daughter. Mama, do you think Daddy can see us from heaven? The question caught Grace off guard, as Emma's questions about James often did. I like to think so. Why? I want to make sure he knows about Daniel and Tyler. I don't want him to think we forgot about him. Grace felt tears spring to her eyes. She lay down beside Emma, pulling her close. Oh, baby. We could never forget Daddy. Never. He's part of who we are. He's part of why I love you so much. But we also love Daniel and Tyler now. Is that okay? Yes, Emma. That's absolutely okay. Love doesn't run out. We don't have to choose between remembering Daddy and caring about Daniel and Tyler. Our hearts are big enough for all of it. Then said, Tyler told me his mom left because she wanted to be happy somewhere else. I told him my dad didn't want to leave, that he died being a hero. We decided we're lucky to have you and Daniel because you both choose to stay. Grace had to bury her face in Emma's hair to muffle her sob. You're both very lucky to have each other as friends, Mama. Emma's voice was small. If you and Daniel got married, would Tyler really be my brother? If that happened, he'd be your stepbrother. But honestly, the labels don't matter as much as how you feel about each other. I'd like him to be my brother. For real? Emma yawned, sleep catching up with her. And I think Daddy would like Daniel. Daniel tells Dad jokes, just like Daddy used to.
Ow.
Grace laughed through her tears. He really does, doesn't he? As Emma drifted off to sleep, Grace stayed beside her, thinking about the impossible gift they'd been given. She'd never expected to find love again, never imagined her careful. Controlled life would be appended by a chance meeting in a hospital room. But here she was, contemplating a future that included Daniel and Tyler. A future that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. The promise of tomorrow 2 weeks later. Daniel asked Grace to meet him for dinner. A real date, just the two of them, while Rebecca babysat both kids at Grace's apartment. They went to a small Italian restaurant tucked into a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Over pasta and wine, they talked about everything and nothing. Work stories, childhood memories, embarrassing moments, dreams for the future. The conversation flowed as easily as it had that first night in the hospital. But now it carried the weight of intimacy, of truly knowing each other. As dessert arrived, Daniel reached across the table and took Grace's hand. I talked to Tyler about us, about the possibility of a future together. All four of us. Grace's heart skipped. I had the same conversation with Emma. What did she say? She wanted to make sure James would be okay with it, that we weren't forgetting him by building something new. Grace smiled through sudden tears. She decided that love doesn't run out, that we can honor the past and embrace the future. Tyler said something similar. He said he could tell you were the kind of person who stays. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. He's right. You're both fighters. You both stay. So is Tyler. Grace squeezed his hand. Daniel, I spent 3 years convinced I'd never feel whole again. That the best I could hope for was to be a good mother to Emma and a competent nurse. I built my entire life around those two things, and now I want more. I want mornings with all four of us fighting over the bathroom. I want school plays where we have to save seats for each other. I want holidays with too much food and terrible Christmas sweaters. I want the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of building a life together. Daniel stood, moving to her side of the table. He knelt beside her chair, and Grace's breath caught as he pulled a small box from his pocket. Grace Holloway, I'm not asking you to forget your past. I'm not trying to replace James or take his place in Emma's heart. But I'm asking if you'll let me be part of your future. If you'll marry me and let me spend every day showing you and Emma how much you're loved. Grace looked at the ring, a simple band with a small diamond that caught the candlelight. It wasn't ostentatious or overwhelming. It was honest and real, just like Daniel. Yes, she whispered. Then, louder, laughing through tears, yes, Daniel. Absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, and Grace felt the last of her walls crumble completely. She was fully open, fully vulnerable, fully alive in a way she'd thought she'd never be again. The new beginning they told the children together the next day. Gathering in Grace's living room with hot cocoa and nervous excitement, Tyler and Emma sat on the couch, looking between the adults with barely contained curiosity. We have something to tell you both. Grace began, glancing at Daniel for support. It's something really good, Daniel added. But we want to make sure you're both okay with it. You're getting married. Emma squealed, apparently having zero patience for suspense. Tyler's eyes went wide. Really? Are we really going to be a family? If you both want that, Grace said gently. This isn't just about Daniel and me. It's about all four of us. You to get a say in this.